Hello and welcome to a special episode of the New York Sports Rush here on the Bet Rivers Network. It is a pleasure to be joined by the voice of Big Blue, the New York Football Giants, Bob Papa, getting set for training camp here with the Giants. A season, Bob, that I'm sure you're excited to get underway with the new head coach led by John Harbaugh. What's been the feel from your perspective? Nobody knows the Giants as well as you do. What's been the feel around the Giants since Harbaugh has taken over here?
Well, great to be on the show, first of all. I mean, there's a lot of positive energy. I was in the facility yesterday. I did a podcast, Carl Banks and I, on our Believe in Giants podcast network with Harbaugh last week. It's really interesting and it's kind of fun when you're doing a podcast with someone and they actually start asking you questions. Harbaugh started peppering Carl Banks with questions about his experiences and stuff like that. So it's pretty refreshing. Just the way he handled the whole Skattebo thing on our show last week when I asked him about it, and his first comment, which went viral, was, at least you could have stuck the landing. I mean, he has a way of diffusing anything that could potentially be controversial. But more importantly, he's won on 193 games, counting the postseason in his career. He's won over 60% of his games. This is the first time the Giants have somebody driving the bus that has the credentials that Tom Coughlin had and the resume and the know-how. And I think that's very comforting for everybody in the building and for Giant fans as well.
I saw that clip of Harbaugh. We'll get to that in a little bit, too, talking about Skattebo on your podcast with Carl. Is that something, though, Bob? Because Harbaugh, when he first came here, it was like, and even you see it in the introductory team meeting here, where he's like, man, the New York Football Giants. He clearly, and his father talked about it, how much he loves the history of the New York Football Giants. That was clearly a draw for Harbaugh, who was the best head coaching candidate out there. Him asking Carl questions, trying to get involved in the history, is that abnormal? You would think with the great history of the Giants that whoever takes over would be into the history, but maybe Harbaugh more so than others. So is that like an abnormal thing that he would be asking Carl specifically questions about the Giants?
No, there's been other guys in the past, but the Harbaughs and Carl Banks go back a long way because Carl was an outstanding player in Flint, Michigan, wound up playing at Michigan State. John Harbaugh's father was coaching at Michigan at the time, and they did recruit Carl. So when you think about the age and Carl and John Harbaugh being of similar ages and everything else, I think there's just a lot of commonality there that exists between them. And, it's refreshing because he's a very inquisitive person. Obviously, he has a plan. He has his tried and true principles, and he has his way about doing business. And anybody that you talk to in the building, in a support role, whether it's training staff, whether it's the video department that works hand in hand with the head coach, the equipment guys, everybody knows what's going on. There's no ambiguity. There's no questions about schedules. There's no questions about, well, what are we going to do here? He's got it all laid out. And I think stability brings a lot of comfort to everybody.
Is it similar to what you felt? Obviously, you've been around the Giants a long time. Is it similar from an outside perspective? For me, it's like, okay, well, the last time they had a guy like this, not a knock on anybody else, but was Coughlin. That's what I think of. Can you feel a similar, energy around the building as far as that stuff goes? All those little things, the attention to detail. Is that a similar or a good comparison, Harbaugh to Coughlin?
Well, I don't want to date myself, but I'm going to date myself. I mean, when I started doing this, Bill Parcells was still the head coach, and between Parcells, Coughlin, and even when Dan Reeves came in 1993, he might have rubbed some people the wrong way at first, but you knew that there were people in the building that were leading the team that had a plan and had a resume, or forget about a resume, had practical experience to lean back on, lean into when troubles arise or whatever the case might be. And Harbaugh certainly portrays that. Again, he's won 193 games. He's got a winning percentage of over 60%. That matters. And it's not a small sample where he had a nice 3-year burst out of a 4-year period, and then there was a lot of below 500. This is a guy that wins and wins a lot. And, he brings stability to the building. And he wanted to be the head coach of the Giants. in this run up to the Giants finding their next head coach, because of his relationship with John Harbaugh and the Harbaugh family, no one did a better job of reporting this than Ian O'Connor of The Athletic. I mean, he was 5 steps ahead of anybody else that was reporting this stuff, and he has impeccable connections within the Giants as well because he's trusted and he's not a sandbagger. He's probably a dying breed of like true journalists and reporters. And Ian wrote about this and talked about it during interviews about when Harbaugh got sprung free from Baltimore, and he kind of had a sense that it might be coming, but he wasn't done coaching. He started looking at the landscape, and he wanted to be a part of one of the flagship franchises, and a franchise that he knows a lot about and the history about the Giants and the Giants' place, within the National Football League. And don't forget all those years of being a head coach, going to the owners' meetings, getting a chance to know John Mara, the Mara family. I think a lot of that stuff just created a comfort level for him. That was the job he zeroed in on when he got let go. And it speaks a lot to the fact that he never really visited and talked with anybody else in earnest.
Yeah, which is, to me, I was surprised that maybe I shouldn't have been, Bob, but I'm going off of recent history and just watching the team and knowing where they are. And usually you have the head coaches that are chasing a situation that they think they can win right away. But to hear him talk about the history for the football team and the organization, the Maras as well, I thought that was great, the perfect fit. You're right. Obviously, he wanted to be here. And now he's going to take on the challenge of getting this team back to respectability. And I just love the fact that he's here, going to lay the foundation. I'm not really expecting much this first year. NFC East is competitive, as you well know. What are your expectations year one? Should we be expecting a team that can legitimately compete for the playoffs, or more about building this foundation the right way in his first year?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, we saw what New England did when they got a real head coach. I mean, they went from a last-place team to a first-place team. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case with the Giants, because really New England only had Buffalo in their way as a team that they had to topple. The Cowboys are still a good football team, and we know that the Philadelphia Eagles pedigree is what it is until proven otherwise. But listen, they blew 4 games last year where they had double-digit leads. They blew an 18-point lead with 6 minutes to go in Denver last year against a team that, if their quarterback doesn't get hurt, maybe they're in the Super Bowl representing the AFC. So there were some signs there that there were parts to this team that were better than the result. And you have to look at the defensive coordinator, and a huge upgrade as far as that's concerned. I think the Giants will be a lot more competitive. I kind of get the same feeling that we had with Coughlin. Like, we used to get on the bus going to games from the team hotel, and you pull into the stadium and go to the locker room and then head out to the field and eventually go up to the booth. And the common feeling was that everybody in the traveling party was that we know we have an edge. If this game is tight, Coughlin and his staff are going to make some decision, make some strategic move somewhere along the way, and they're going to outmaneuver the other coach most of the time. You always felt like you had an edge going into the game. Harbaugh gives you that feeling again. So, I could see this team 7-8 wins. Maybe they get to 9 wins. I mean, they do have a tough schedule, but I think they're going to be a lot more competitive, and I think they're going to win some of those 50-50 games that they just literally handed away last year.
Which is going to be refreshing to watch, especially when it comes to special teams. Like, my God, not even having kickers that could get the job done. I know Harbaugh's not going to deal with that nonsense. So you would think, Bob, it's not like the team has been that bad. They've been close in certain spots. You mentioned a blown lead last year. You would think that with the head coach as experienced and as successful as Harbaugh has been, the special teams as well, that should add up to immediate wins in games that they would give away in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that was one of my fun parts about the podcast that we did with him last week, because we got into special teams. And, he started kind of sharing Parcells' wisdoms, like as far as and he wasn't quoting Parcells, but I remember Parcells talking about this stuff in media sessions and whatever about how, the punter is part of your defense. The punt team is part of your defense because there's this thing in Dave Jennings, when I worked with him for many years, would talk about the hidden yardage. And, you ask any member of the Super Bowl 21 champion Giants and that famous NFC championship game against Washington, in which they won 17-0 at Giant Stadium when Parcells took the wind. A lot of guys will tell you that the unsung MVP of that game was Sean Landeta. He punted the ball magnificently and created field position and pinned Washington going into the wind. And then Fiegels did it under Coughlin with his directional punting. Those are very important aspects, and that's the stuff that Harbaugh is not going to let go as far as special teams. You talked about the kicker, right? Those are scoring points, whether it's an extra point or a field goal. Those are points, just like punting the ball and covering punt and covering kicks and winning field position will equate to points. I think 100 yards of winning field position is worth 7 points. Parcells would always say, if you commit 100 yards worth of penalties, you're giving up 7 points. So Harbaugh is very well cognizant of all of those things, and that helps a team that might be limited in certain areas if you can excel in that phase of the game.
And I look forward to watching football being played and coached the right way with those little things being cleaned up here and obviously hoping it results in some more wins. All right, let's talk about the quarterback, Jackson Dart. Another thing, obviously Dart has shown great ability here, being the young player that he is, but he has some things to clean up. And the idea of pairing Harbaugh with Dart has me excited, Bob. I'm sure you as well. But Dart still has that same mentality. You think it's going to be, is it maybe the biggest challenge Harbaugh is going to face to try to get Jackson to understand that maybe being so aggressive, I use the term reckless on the field, that's not going to benefit him long term. I know he's got to coach it in. And where we at with that Harbaugh-Dart relationship this early on and trying to maybe curtail Dart's a little bit reckless behavior on the field?
Well, I mean, he's talked about using Dart's athletic ability, and knowing that he is such a talented athlete, that they're going to implement that as part of what they're going to do offensively. But there's a way to do it and do it smart, right? I mean, look at Russell Wilson early in his career when his legs were a big factor in those early days of Seattle. Even Mahomes to that extent. You know what they never do, though? You really don't remember Russell Wilson taking monster hits. There's an area in which you need to understand it's not worth cutting back for 4 extra yards. Just get out of bounds. And I think with Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator and Greg Roman, who has been involved with a lot of teams that have mobile quarterbacks, even working under John's brother Jim, I think that's part of the game that they'll refine with Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart knows being in concussion protocol and not being available is a death knell to the team.
Yeah, it's a fine line between one, same thing with Skattebo, and I'll get to him in a second here. Like, you want the player to be himself. That's part of the appeal with Jackson Dart. His athleticism, his aggressiveness, his ability to want to get that first down, but you got to keep the guy healthy. So for me, it's always been the best way to utilize a running quarterback. And again, I'm not a coach. I'm just saying, from broken down pass plays, not the design runs, not looking for contact. Dart's always going to have that ability to scramble and either make extra time for himself or take off and get the first down or get big yardage. You just want to clean up the little bit of the diving head first or being a little too reckless or tough. I mean, he's a tough guy, which I respect. It's why I love him. But obviously him getting hurt is not something that the Giants want to see. I mean, they need him to remain healthy. So it'll be curious to see about Harbaugh, how he curtails that. Skattebo, you mentioned, you had Harbaugh on.
Well, just before you get to Skattebo, just even on the designed runs, though, there's a smart way to do it and there's a dumb way to do it. If you have a design run and your guy breaks free, you want him to get what he can get, but then get down. This is where the cutting back and taking people on, because the guy he replaced, Daniel Jones, who, everybody in the locker room loved Daniel Jones. His teammates in Indianapolis loved Daniel Jones. You ask anybody, Daniel Jones was arguably pound for pound the toughest player on the team. And that same reckless abandon led to a boatload of injuries for him during the course of his career. So you don't want to see that repeating itself with Jackson Dart. You want him to be smarter.
With Skattebo, I feel like it's the opposite, where I love the answer that he had on your podcast with Carl on the Believe Network, talking about how, he didn't land the flip, whatever, that was funny. But Skattebo, I like when he plays reckless on the field. That's what he is. It's the off the field stuff I'm worried about. It's not even the backflip, like whatever that happens. Where are we at with Skattebo's health, and how do you think his off the field stuff is going to be handled by Harbaugh?
I think, first of all, his health, as Harbaugh told us on the podcast, I mean, he's on schedule. I mean, he's been doing, listen, even at veteran minicamp, he was doing stuff. He's recovered. And I know some guys that play in the league now that don't play for the Giants that I'm friends with that have had similar injuries to what Skattebo had. And a couple of them told me, actually, when they came back, they were actually better than they were. And the injury did not cause any kind of issues for them. And even the fact that at the charity softball game, the Brian Burns license plate guy softball game, I mean, he stuck the landing on that backflip, and that was, a month and a half ago. Skattebo's all systems go. As far as the off the field stuff, Cam is no dummy, right? He's leaning into a persona. And he's going to kind of play that role and play that persona because that's kind of who he is. But as far as there's no real problems off the field with the guy. I mean, he's all about ball. He's not getting into trouble with the law or anything like that. Sometimes he kind of gives you the impression of John Belushi in Animal House, right? Like it's a little bit crazy, but
Right.
That's all well and good. Harbaugh's been around enough characters in his career. He'll know how to manage it. And if something does seem a little on the edge, Harbaugh's really great at diffusing it, just like he did with the podcast last week. Just like there were a lot of people that were annoyed that Jackson Dart was on a yacht and then threw a dime to a guys in a jet ski and then did a flip off the boat. Harbaugh just found a way to turn it into a positive.
I mean, don't you think it's just today's world? Like, nobody would know about this stuff years ago. It's social media. They're not, like you said, they're not bad guys. All right, everybody takes it. Oh, my God, Jackson Dart doing a flip off a yacht. Yeah, but, this is what kids do. We're all just now seeing it because of social media.
100%. I mean, Carl Banks and I, in our last podcast, the one after the Harbaugh podcast that we released last Friday, we spent about 10 minutes before we welcomed on our guest, Chris Bizignano. We spent 10 minutes talking about social media and the fact that those guys didn't have it when they played. So Carl is not of the impression of the, old man get off my lawn stuff. Because we started trying to guess, what players, which one of your teammates would have, you think, been active on social media? Carl would have been very active because he had a clothing business that he was developing as a player. He would have been all over social media, and he admits that. Phil Simms probably would have been more like Eli Manning on social media when Eli was a player and really not do much. Mark Collins probably would have been all over social media and so on and so forth. Joe Morris wouldn't have been. Perry Williams probably wouldn't have been. Leonard Marshall would have been a megastar on Instagram and Twitter. They could all say, well, that's not the way it was back then. Parcells would have never let us. You didn't have a phone that could record your whole life. You didn't have a phone that can dispute things that are said about you in the media, and you can address it head on and own your own stuff. That's what these players, these athletes in all sports are doing today, is they're trying to control their own narrative and build their own brand for post-playing career like the Kelseys did with their podcast and a million other guys have done.
I'd love to have seen Parcells try to handle guys on social media. That would have been something fun to watch.
But you know what? He would have evolved. He would have evolved because if that was the set of circumstances he was dealing with at that point in time, he would have figured out a way to evolve with it. I mean, look at Belichick and the Patriots and how those players handled social media when he was the head coach there. I mean, it was pretty muted, but it's not like guys didn't have their platform. But he created guidelines that were necessary to follow.
You know, it's a great point. I actually spoke with Parcells not too long ago at Saratoga for the Belmont, and I was like, "Do you think your coaching style would work in today's NFL?" And he said, "Yeah, look at Sean Payton." So you're right. Like Sean Payton is the model of Parcells and could deal with social media and evolve in today's world. Couple more, Bob, and we really appreciate your time here. Where are we at with Nabers? Everything okay? Trending the right way for Malik Nabers? Last I'm reading, it seems like that's going to be the case with his health. What are you hearing about Nabers?
Well, you use a famous line from listening to 1010 Wins or News 88, traffic and weather together. Mass transit's on or close to schedule. I mean, the fact that he wasn't put on PUP, I think, is a very encouraging thing. Is that a guarantee he's playing week 1 against the Cowboys? I don't know. I wouldn't say it is or it isn't. I think they want to get him into camp. I know he's been working hard in all of his rehab and working with the training staff. They need him, obviously, because he's a difference maker. But I think it's a very important sign that he was not placed on PUP to start training camp. So that means they're encouraged by the progress that he's making.
Last one. Where are we at with the defense here? I hated that the Giants had to move on from Dexter Lawrence. I understand it, but I just love Dexter, the player. Was hoping maybe Harbaugh could get more out of him than what we saw a year ago. Where are you at with the Giants defense going into this year?
Well, I have some concerns, right? Obviously, Dexter Lawrence of 22, 23, 24, 25, 21, 22, 23, 24, that's a hard guy to replace. Easy to replace the Dexter Lawrence of 2025 because he really didn't do that much.
Was it health? What do you think was the reason for that, Bob?
Contract dispute.
So that was
it's all about it was all about he wanted a new contract the year before. They wouldn't give it to him. He wanted a new contract starting last offseason. They wouldn't give it to him. And he basically said, okay, I'm not getting a new contract.
That's a problem.
This is what I'm going to do. And he was never in shape. He was not the player that he was. It was obvious on tape when you watched it. He wasn't double teamed nearly as much as he had been. Listen, he was a fantastic player. I'm not going to say a great player. He was a fantastic player for the Giants. And 22, 23, 24, he was arguably one of the best, especially post Aaron Donald retirement. He was one of the best, if not the best, interior defensive lineman in the sport, right? But it's a short sample. I mean, if you remember, after his rookie year and even after his second year, there were a lot of people talking about, oh my God, the Giants wasted not 1 but 2 first-round draft picks in that draft. Dexter Lawrence at 17, like, what a waste of a first-round pick. He developed as a player. I think the Giants are hoping that Darius Alexander continues to develop as a player because he showed a lot of signs later in the year. They've added some veteran players to help fill that. But I think now they're a little bit more linebacker-centric, right? Under Accorsi and Coughlin, it was more about the defensive linemen, and then you had your Antonio Pierce, your Michael Boley, but it was kind of a revolving door. Chase Blackburn. You had various guys that they used and mixed and matched. Now you look at Edmonds, you look at the rookie lining up inside in tandem, what they can bring you outside. So I think if they can have guys that can hold the fort, do their job in the interior, it's going to free up the other guys. And then the other concern of corners in the secondary, right? What are we going to get out of that group? Paulson Adebo needs to play better than he did last year. But I kind of throw it all out the window because they were poorly coordinated for the last 2 years. And in fact, defensively, they look better when they put Charlie Bullen in as the interim defensive coordinator. Played better. And suddenly all these guys were looking better as players. Now you have a legit defensive coordinator in there. I think that's going to make a big difference as well.
You can check him out, obviously, on the radio, the voice of the New York Giants, and his Believe Network podcast with the great Carl Banks. Bob, we appreciate your time, man. Great catching up with you. I really do appreciate the time. Best of luck this season.
All right. Great. I'm glad this all worked out from Portugal. So,
yeah, what's going on? Are you on vacation?
No. PGA Tour Champions has a new event the Portugal Invitational played at Ernie L's new golf course here about 30 minutes west of Faro on the southern tip of Portugal. So we'll be on Golf Channel Live Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then fly home Monday. Not home, fly Monday from Faro to White Sulphur Springs and the Greenbrier.
And then what are we doing with West Virginia, where camp is at? When are you heading down there?
Monday. When I leave here Monday, I'll go here, Newark to Roanoke, and then drive to the Greenbrier.
Ah, okay, drive down. Okay. All right, Bob. Well, enjoy Portugal and the golf tournament. We'll talk to you soon. Best of luck with the Giants this season. We really do appreciate the time.
Yeah, great to be on the show.
All right. And remember, football season around the corner here. Reminder, we will be at the Bar A live show with Francesa is going to be there. Can't wait. The Bet Rivers Bash. That's at Bar A Thursday, September 3rd. JJ and I'll be back with you tomorrow as well for another episode of the New York Sports Rush. We'll see you there. Bye.